Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Nah Fine, Did I Just Watch? With your host, as always, Kyle McLemore. This week we'll be recapping and reviewing the latest addition to the MCU. That's right, it's Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3. Now, before we get too far along in the review, make sure you hit that like and subscribe because it's much appreciated and it helps keep the show alive. And if you haven't seen G's of the G, Volume 3, and would still like to, make sure you pause now and return later, as there may be several spoilers up ahead. That's right, this is your official spoiler alert. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 sets a new MCU record for longest gap in between sequels. And although the Guardians have the most time in between their movies, it doesn't feel like that big of a gap due to them being prominently featured in the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and also being featured in the latest Thor movie, Thor: Love and Thunder. And Volume 3 sees the return of our familiar cast of Guardians, including Chris Pratt, Bautista, Zoe Saldana, Gillan, Pom Klementieff, and of course the voices of Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel. Volume 3 also has the addition of a couple of newcomers to the MCU, starting with Will Poulter, who maybe you recognize from his previous work in We Are the Millers. He brings to life Adam Warlock. Volume 3 also sees the introduction of a new villain to the MCU, the High Evolutionary, played by Chukwudi Iwuji, who has previously worked with director James Gunn in the DC universe on Peacemaker. Previously, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies have always leaned a little bit heavier on the more comedic side, a little bit more heavy on the lighthearted, goofy, kind of jokey, everyone's having a good time kind of vibe. In this edition, James Gunn goes in a sort of a different direction and kind of leans heavier on the more emotional side of the storytelling. Volume 3 has a relatively large cast of characters, and so the film sort of breaks into three different parts. It's mostly focused on Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana, and then you've got Mantis, Nebula, and Bautista, and then you've got kind of Rocket on his own. So it's these three parties that we're kind of bouncing around between. And I couldn't help but be impressed by the on-screen chemistry of Gillan and Pom Klementieff, and it's really evolved over the course of these films. Up until now, Drax, Nebula, and more specifically Mantis have all kind of been one-note characters. They've all been kind of sort of underdeveloped, and it's nice to see them finally evolving and becoming more complete characters. Chris Pratt giving a great performance as the goofy, charismatic, and always lovable Star-Lord. And of course the always amazing Zoe Saldana playing Gamora, and this is more prime time Gamora. This is our in the past Gamora who doesn't love anybody, who's angry as hell and kicking ass. The more fierce Gamora, who in my opinion is way more entertaining than the more lovey-dovey, always ooh, I love Chris Pratt Gamora. And that brings us to Bradley Cooper, who of course plays Rocket Raccoon, and what a performance he gives. Although it is all just a vocal performance, he is really putting in the work because he's playing young Rocket, old Rocket, angry Rocket, sad Rocket. Rocket's story through the film is extremely emotional, and Bradley Cooper does an amazing job of backing up those vocals with a ton of emotion. Let's talk about some of the visuals throughout the film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is visually stunning. James Gunn has always done great at providing amazing visuals in his film, amazing settings, and just great things to look at, but he is in his prime when he's going to space. He is so good at combining two completely opposite aesthetics, the beauty and amazing breathtakingness of space, and then this weird, gross, funky organicness. There is a huge theme throughout the film of the mix of organic and machine and the blending of two of them together. There is this amazing space station that's they say it's bioengineered, so it's grown, it's not built, so it's organic tissue, but then also wrapped with steel and bolts, and it's this weird, it looks visually gross and sticky, and it looks like a brain and skin, but then at the same time it's somehow the color and everything mixes together to make it like stunning, and although it is like gross, it's simultaneously like beautiful and like really amazing to look at. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 also setting a record for the most prosthetics used, over 1,000 actors. There is a huge theme of like animals being forcefully evolved into their more humanoid form, and so there is 1,000 actors who are all partially humanoid animals, and they all look pretty great. And so from start to finish, Volume 3 is visually stunning. Not just with all the impressive makeup work with all these prosthetics and all these actors, but also Volume 3 continues to raise the bar by having all these new, unique, super colorful, weird, organic space kind of settings. Volume 3 not only features amazing settings, but it also has incredible cinematography. There is a scene in a hallway where they are fighting, and it is mind-blowing. Not only is the scene insanely choreographed, but it's done so in this small, tiny hallway, but it's never feeling cramped or like confusing, or like it's all done so perfectly smooth that you just get to watch everything happen beautifully. And it's like a pretty long scene too. I remember like sitting there like as it's going on, just being like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so let's talk about the story of Volume 3. Volume 3 goes heavy on the emotion, and it goes heavy on the animals. I'm talking heavy. And so going in, it's like you kind of know what to expect, because building up until the third film, it's like everybody knows that like Rocket's got a past, right? Like everybody knows that he got messed up, like he was like tortured and like rebuilt, and like he never talks about it because it's so horrible. So we kind of knew going in it was gonna be horrible, but nothing could prepare for the amount of like cute, adorable animals that just rip your heart out. And so we know going into it that like any of these animals that you're introducing, we know it's going down later. It's gonna be horrible later. So every time James Gunn is like, hey, look at this cute rabbit, I'm like, no. Hey, check out this cute little otter over here. I'm just like, no. Hey, did I show you my cute little stupid walrus with like a cute British accent? And he's like, oh, you guys are my best friends. And I'm just like, no, dude, I don't want to get attached to these stupid, it's gonna shatter me later, dude. And shatter it does. And so let's hit G's of the G, Volume 3, with our overall rating. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a thoroughly enjoyable film. And this is mostly due to the strong connection from the entire cast. It really feels authentic, and it feels like a legit bond. And although Volume 3 goes heavy on the emotional side of the story, director James Gunn does a phenomenal job of really maintaining that balance of, although it is emotionally heavy, it still is like that fun vibe of the Guardians, so it never tilts in one way, it keeps the balance throughout the film. And if that wasn't enough, the visuals in Volume 3 are some of the most stunning in the MCU. Not to mention, everyone's outfits all look amazing, all the space stations, all the spaceships, all the weird, funky humanoid creatures, and even the High Evolutionary. He has like a skin pullback thing that's going on the whole film. It just looks amazing, like the whole side right here. I could not stop staring at how amazing everything looks. Guardians of the Galaxy succeeds on almost every level, even with a runtime going about 2 hours, 30 minutes. It never feels long at all. It never feels like there's a lull in the movie. It never has a moment where you're like, what time is it? How long has this movie been going on? It has a very natural flow like the entire film. Overall, Volume 3 brings us some really great performances, some amazing cinematography, and a story that is not only fun, but emotionally heavy. There is not a ton of negative things to say about Volume 3, and so we're going to hit Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 with an A. That's right, coming in top of the class, not a ton of things I can say negatively, and not a ton of things I can say that I can think to improve. If you felt differently about G's of the G Volume 3, make sure you comment down below, and if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe because it's much appreciated. I am your host as always, Kyle McLemore, and we'll see you next time at the movies.